We are going. We are live. Namaste. Good evening. Adab. Sasyakal. Thank you so much, audience, for joining the session. I am AB, HR leader and founder and national president of HR Sampark. Today, we are again on the second exciting session of the podcast, and I have somebody whom I have known recently, but we have a cerebral equality which we have come across. I have none other than Miss Radhika Nair. Radhika is a great senior individual and professional in HR industry. Couple of gratuity periods under her belt with Accenture, and she leads the HR function for Volvo Group. Thank you so much, Radhika, for coming to this podcast. Radhika is also one of our Samparkian fellow members of Bangalore HR Leaders Group. Thank you so much, Radhika, for coming forward and sparing your time on a weekend to do this.
Thank you, Ashish. A pleasure.
Audience, while we were discussing on the topic, and you would have seen, we were discussing about quiet quitting. And over this period, when we started to dwell with this topic, me and Radhika were unveiling that we learned so many things which we were having a perception which was incorrect. And we thought that the first thing which we need to do is to put in terms that what is the right meaning of this terminology. This is a serious topic, but we'd like to make it light so that you all enjoy this short podcast. Radhika, my first question to you, and we look forward to enlighten the audience. What is quiet quitting, and is it a new phenomenon?
Thank you, and very good afternoon to all of the audience here. Quiet quitting, it is, while the word, I think we started to hear about it only last year. And if I just explain what quiet quitting is, while there is the word quitting in it, it's got nothing to do with quitting at all. It is actually an approach to work in which the employee meets the minimum requirement of the job description, but nothing more. So no discretionary effort, no going above and beyond. So doing the bare minimum without taking any initiative. So it is often described, therefore, as a change in mindset at work. As a result could be of demotivation, burnout, or stress, or not really having a great relationship, with the team or with the manager at work. So it is, if I could really summarize it, it's a rejection of the hustle culture and some reclaiming of life beyond work. And all this could be because of various things, like I called it. It could be burnout. It could be not able to manage life beyond work. There's period of time where people have been having huge additional work that was piling up, no relationship or not a conducive environment with the manager recognized, which seems like the most, basically because of all this, an employee leading to a place where the employee does bare minimum that is required as part of his job description and not going any beyond. So that is job quitting. And if you say is it a new phenomenon? Not at all. Because if you realize, and this has been there for some time. Yes, it's just that the nomenclatures have been very different. If you think about it, and if I were to call out the signs of it, it all also indicates towards an employee disengagement. So when in the past we would have, what do you do with a disengaged employee? That's the same criteria that we need to look at when we are looking at quiet quitting as well. So if I quiet quit, is nothing but employee disengagement.
Thank you so much, Radhika. I think you cleared a lot of air and misconception about it. Specifically, there were people, keeping up their thought process or perceptions in either startups or, big organizations. I think we have to go back to our basics to manage such kind of people who are a part of this disengaged. In terms of Radhika, let us go back to that good old question. Since you have helped us to identify that this is more of managing disengaged employee, how does an identify signs of a quiet quitting in employees, and how does it impact the organization? If you can help us to give your thoughts on that.
Sure. I'll talk about classic signs, but if you really look at it, because if you look at the signs, it's more or less about being disengaged in the organization, and therefore, how do you deal with it is also similar to how you deal with retention or any other such issues that we have. So the classic signs of a quiet quitting or employees who quite quitting are being checked out. They don't finish the projects on time, or if they finish projects on time, then the quality is suboptimal, or there is lack of clear communication, and there's always a gap. You're not never sure what the employee really wants. They stop volunteering for tasks, and if they do, then they only volunteer for really easy tasks. They claim to be too busy to help any of the team members. And most visible one, which I would say, is most of the time such employees tend to be very cynical about everything that's happening around. And this can, most of the HRs can really decode this can erode the manager employee relationship, deeper dissatisfaction in the team, and create a very toxic and non-conducive environment at work. So as you can imagine, like you said, is there an impact that happens in an organization because of that? Yes. This certainly leads to lower productivity, lack of teamwork, and all of this obviously leading to company losses. I was just reading the other day somewhere where it said there's a conference board that says $1.5 trillion losses every year just because of quiet quitting, is what they record. And even Gallup had some surveys to say that there's quite a percentage, and which was more than 50% of the employees in an organization could actually be quite quitting, which is alarming if you really think about it. So
I think
those are pretty much, yeah.
oh, I completely agree, Radhika, because as people, practitioners, this is something which is very alarming because uh, the entire duty, as you mentioned, is onus to the line managers or the functional leads to identify,
Yes.
bring into perspective, and enable us to do, because we will not be able to identify because we are not seeing them day in day out. End of the day, as a people doctor,
That's right.
you have
That's right.
done
That's right.
the descriptive and analysis, and also help us giving what is quite quitting. So the entire audience wants to know the prescriptive part of the people doctors. What should we do? What was the right way to impact? Minimize the impact, or do something. Which helps us to mitigate this kind of risk.
So, like I called out before, it is the same ways that we would look at an employee retention or managing workplace complacency. Because when we would look at employee retention or workplace complacency, there are typically certain areas that we look at, right? And for quite quitting or for disengagement as well, it's pretty much the same rules that apply. And as HR, I think it's even more important that we invest in our people managers and leaders, because people managers and leaders are the ones who play a critical role in creating the right culture. So therefore, HR, investing in our people managers to be able to do the right thing for their teams, creating the right culture, I think can go a long way. So in my head, that's the starting point, saying invest in our people managers, because most of the time, especially if it is an engineering, kind of an organization, most of the people managers are homegrown or have been an engineer, senior engineer, so on and so forth, and then grew up to be a people manager. So not necessarily all of them have it in their veins to manage people very well, or most of the time it so happens that they learn through the mistakes that they've made. So I think as HR, we play a great role there to enable our managers to kind of tell them the right ways of doing it. For example, what should we enable our HR managers, our people managers with? How do you foster team dynamics within the team, where the team is set in the foundation of trust, respect, and support? How do you encourage teams to take personal time off? How do you empower the teams to own their decisions, to own the work that they are doing? So, irrespective of what's the role that a person is doing, how do you empower the person to say that you are a leader in that role, and therefore you're empowered to do it the right way, or if there's a better way to do it? How do we create a culture of advancement or internal mobility, which in larger organizations can really be a problem. How do we, which is very basic, I feel, but something that gets faltered all the time, proactively ask for feedback and provide feedback, because the way that can create an emotional connect with the employee, I don't think there is a more simpler way to do it. How do we also, as managers, because as managers we all know that there is workload that will come in, there are peaks that come in, there are troughs that come in, but how do we make sure that the peaks are not consistent? Meaning to say that the increase in workload is short term. And of course, compensation plays a role here. And when it comes to, and I know that most of the time it is very difficult to please an employee just by compensation. But my intent of saying that is, how do we make sure that our principles of compensation are based on where that role is pegged in the market, the skills that is required, so whether it is a critical skill or otherwise, and what's the performance that the person brought to the table. And how do we, how do we tell our managers to maintain boundaries? Because we've all heard, in the last, during pandemic especially, that there were weekend work, Sunday emails, Saturday emails, the number of meetings that really went up, the length of meeting would just go on, and all of this can be curbed to make life a little easier. And these are all under the control of the manager, if you really look at it. Also, an important factor is on the role growth. What I mean by that is actually 2 points there. One is when an employee comes into the organization, there is a JD that or a job description that really gets looked at. But when the employee comes into the organization, the role could diversify much beyond what the job description is talking about. So how do you really prepare the employee to make sure that they are aware that such a thing may happen? Because at times there are employees that come back and say, but we didn't sign up for this at all. Or when you talk about stepping up could be optional, but at times managers do assume that everybody wants to step up, but that may not necessarily be the case at all. The employees may not necessarily want to step up at all. And again, something very simple but something again very miserly done is having a great employee recognition strategy, because the mindset that an employee also gets into is, if no one cares, then why even try? So therefore, making sure that there is a good employee recognition strategy is very important. Continuous learning and sustainable growth. Why I say continuous learning is very critical is, most of the time, especially in India, we are all driven by what we learn every day. So if at times we find the place is becoming very complacent, and I really know it like the palm of my hand, then there is a possibility that I may also want to reduce the effort that I put in the job. So if it's a place where there is continuous learning, there is sustainable growth, then there is a high possibility that the intellectual engagement of an employee is better in an organization. And of course, as I think as a manager, there is that underlying expectation that a manager really builds a rapport with the team, and builds a relationship within the team, because that really takes a long way. While most of the time the managers really focus on the task, but the task gets done when the managers have a great relationship with that set of team members. We say, right? I mean, for some managers, we've really gone over and beyond to do much more, and with some managers, we've just scratched the back. And most importantly, and something as a word of caution, we may do all of this or quite a few of this based on our environment, our jobs, or the structure of the job that we're in. But it is important to watch and wait. Why I say that is because once the employee has moved into a phase of quiet quitting or disengagement, and I'll keep talking about both of it in the same breath, but if employees have really shifted into a space like that, then it takes time for the employees to come back into their spirits. So therefore, sorry, therefore it is important to do the right thing, give them time so that they are able to come back into that space of engagement. And more importantly, I think if there is a way we can create a sense of purpose in our employees, like we were talking about it maybe some time back, saying there are times when most of the time people think, oh, what I'm doing is just about coding, or what I'm doing is very transactional. How do I still find a purpose? But end of the day, whatever people are doing, there is a larger purpose which the organization is working towards. For example, if I talk from Volvo perspective, we are all working towards a sustainable transport solution, or we are working towards making sure that we have the safest vehicle on the road. Now, irrespective of what people are doing, it is all towards this vision in one way or the other. So therefore, how do you get your employees to really get tuned to the vision of the organization, and how they are contributing it towards it, because that can be a great motivator, because there's a larger cost to your work. Back to you. Sorry.
So much, Radhika. There are so many comments which have come on WhatsApp, and Sham has written, "Madam बहुत धारा प्रवाह बोलती हैं, brilliant to listen to her." So thank you, Sham. I think this is just the tip of the iceberg. I have spoken to Radhika, and the day I spoke, I just connected. Sometimes, but that is one of her persona, that she is one of the very best communicators, and she talks. Ritika has mentioned it's a mini master class. Thank you so much, Ritika, for appreciating it. What Radhika said, audience, just to snip it in three things. She mentioned one is connect, and that is very important with the line managers or the people managers or the HRs. There's an
Yeah.
interesting question which I will ask Radhika on these lines. Ritika has asked the same question. So one is, as we say, Sampark. It's all about building a Sampark within the community, outside the community, at the workplace, outside the workplace. Radhika also
Yes.
spoke about conduct. Very important is line of communication should be clear, conduct should be monitored, and the most important thing is connection. With the connection
Yeah.
with the line manager, so sometimes we heard that people don't leave the companies, they leave their bosses end of the day. So it is a manager's responsibility to build that connection. A very interesting question, Radhika, for you, which Ritika has asked. She is a young HR professional. Radhika ma'am, so she's asking, Radhika ma'am, thank you so much for the mini master class. My question is, Ashish sir asked question of HR role, and you kept mentioning people managers. What is the difference between
Mm.
a HR and a people manager? If you can help us to make that
Sure.
difference.
Sure. So, see, a people manager, what I meant by that is a supervisor, or somebody who manages a set of people. So, for example, in any hierarchy in an organization, there is the employees, and then there would be a supervisory cadre, right, where you have people reporting into that person. And in my head, that's a people manager. HR is an enabler. So is HR also a people manager? You may choose to say that, because HR also have people responsibility. But in my head, HR is still an enabler. Where an employee really connects with most of the time is with their manager. That's their immediate ecosystem. So that's the difference, really. And therefore, while the question was on people manager, my point was, people manager could really enable the supervisors or the leaders or the people managers, as I put, to make sure that they are able to create an ecosystem where people can thrive and flourish.
Great. Thank you so much, Radhika, for clarifying. I had promised all the audience that we'll keep it short and sweet, and we are just about to end our session. I will just be able to take one question, audience. I'm sorry, but this is a podcast that we will not extend the podcast beyond 22 minutes. The only question which I want to ask, Radhika, which has been posted by Anuj, is you mentioned about people's belonging next to an
Mm-hmm.
organization. Now there are two worlds which employees thrive in. One
Mm.
is a startup world, and another one is the larger organization world. And where the clarity of role,
Mm.
we were also discussing the same lines. The question has come. The clarity of role is not
Yeah.
much clear in a startup, where the clarity of role is clear in the plateaued organizations or the growing organization. How these two
Yeah.
worlds are distinct, and how can we bridge the gap of disengaged employee or quite quitting because every people manager or a HR as an enabler will be, thriving is two worlds. So this question to you.
Sure. See, like you rightly called out, with a startup ecosystem and with a mature organization, the difference most of the time is in a startup organization, it is more fluid, and therefore work comes based on many factors. While in a mature organization, you have your role descriptions or your job descriptions, everything chalked out pretty well. Having said that, irrespective of both, while of course it's a great start to have a knowledge of what I would like to do, and therefore enhance from there. That works for a few people to say, "Oh, I know this is my job. This is what I intend to do, and this is how I improvise." But there are some people who really hate being boxed like that, and therefore for them a startup ecosystem really helps, because in a startup ecosystem they have the luxury to do things their way. They can figure out the right way to get there, because it's the outcome that may be most important in a startup ecosystem. So irrespective of both the states, it is still very important that we have a employee base that is more engaged to the purpose of the organization. And I would call that out again, because for me, that is underlying. What are you really working towards? Of course, does it bring bread and butter to home? The answer is yes. Does it give you a great, standard of life? The answer may be yes. But when it comes to your mental, emotional well-being, and there has to be a larger purpose that as an employee or as a human being you are aligned to. So therefore in my head, that engagement to the purpose of the organization, and how that what's in it for me is very important. So how the what's in it for me for that employee and the purpose of the organization can be married, and if it can be, then that's the best place, irrespective of which ecosystem we are talking about. I hope that clarifies.
Thank you so much, Radhika. You struck gold. You just struck gold today with your thoughts, and we also, touch 22 minutes as we promised. But audience, I think this would always be as Ritika. Thank you so much. I think I convey your thoughts. This is a mini masterclass by Radhika Nair to all of you on quiet quitting, which you will not get it anywhere. Thank you so much, Radhika, for taking out time on a weekend and coming and doing it for Sampark. Our entire perseverance to bring out problem statements and getting leaders like you, and you coming forward and doing it means really a lot. And a big thank you from the entire Sampark family to you for enlightening us on this topic. Thank you so much, and audience, thank you so much. I'm sorry I could not ask all the questions. You can please touch base with Radhika on LinkedIn. She will get back to you in case you have more questions. Thank you so much, Radhika, once again,
Absolutely.
and
Thank you,
namaste to
and
all the
thank you,
audience.
everybody. Yeah. Namaste. Thank you.